We got it. And club news, as you recall, anybody who's invited here should be meeting current CDC guidelines, but we have special extra ones that include that you are fully vaccinated and that you are masked and that you put your mask on anytime that you are not eating. If you would please remember, it's hard to remember to do that, but it's ideal if you can. And notice this little fellow here, the thinker with his mask, has been gaining weight through COVID. He's just stretching out and not feeling as good as he used to. You should be thinking about that too. So, thank you, Brian Bauer, for coming in, and some other folk who came in. It's just marvelous. You show up here 6:30, it's amazing. People are like, boom, 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 and going. And today we had a club member who was going to help us afterwards to put things back right, as they should be for the Masons. And unfortunately, that person wasn't able to make it. Checked in, and I just said, well, we'll have to figure it out, right? So if you are able to stay for a few minutes afterwards, that would be really, really welcome and helpful. Thank you. So, readers, Kelly, you saw those people come in?
Saw them all.
Lovely. How many are we today? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, moving target, 15, 16, 17,
21.
18, 21. That's the number. I think everybody else was just waiting to see if I could count that far. Bill Schlutius, you're online.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Beautiful.
So, if you would lead us in the pledge, please.
All right. If everyone would look at the flag, put your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and
and to the republic
for
which it stands,
one
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And Joe Gaz leading us. Now we've got our masks on, we sing, right? We're looking good. I think we're looking better than we used to.
Well, I don't know about that. All right, Terry. Oh, biggest news in baseball right now. Unbelievable. Earliest, and I hate to say it, I'm gonna have to go that way because our Yankees are fading in the East, unfortunately. So that said, take me out to the ball game, Rod. Ready? Sounds good. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the ground. I
don't good time. I don't care.
That guy rings the bell, doesn't he? Right. And thought for the day from Bob Keyser. Hold on a second here. Let's mic you up. And do keep in mind, folks, that the folk in our Zoom audience can't really hear unless you're either close to this or talking to a mic.
I got it. This thought from the day is from the Roman statesman Cicero, and this was particularly appropriate for this group. It's the best way to stay happy is to stay busy.
Best way to stay happy is to stay busy. We'll do that. Excellent. Thank you, Bob. And visitors, guests, and Zoom participants.
No, Joe.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to welcome this morning Dan Krokowski from the Action Sports and Power Equipment Company, Honda and Still Outdoor Power, right here in Sebastopol. Dan, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, David. And I just wanted to say, yeah, we're happy to be in town here. We're right over by where the old video store is, next to the bicycle store. So if you need any chainsaws from Steel or Honda generators, just come by and see us. Thanks again.
I've been there. That place is nice and clean and well staffed.
And I'm ready for a chainsaw, really. I want that long one with the little thing for my yard. Yeah,
That'll be good, but don't.
I've
bring
been
it in.
using my girlfriend's next thing I want one. So Anna's here. Anna Hooker has been approved by membership, going to board of directors next, and we just love having Anna.
Morning, Anna. Back over there, by Joe. So, and who is in our Zoom audience? Well, I don't see them there. Oh, no, I do. Hello, Barbara, Judy, Al's there, and Dan Needham. They're in the crowd. We've got a slide for you today. Let's see. It's moving. I see Linton, Simke, Lori, darling, and Joyce. Darlene, Diana, we're here. So, welcome to all, and glad you're here. It's time for us to do the mute all for the folk in the Zoom gallery, and do remember how to unmute yourselves when it's the right time. Just hold that space bar if you're on our computer. That's the easy way. A bit of Rotary inspiration. Somebody want to read this? I'll mic you if you do. 3, 2, 1. So Rotary would like us to memorize this as an elevator speech because it says it well. We can send it out as an email, but it says, together, we see a world where people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe in our communities, and I think this is important, in ourselves. Happy birthday, Joyce! Joyce, unmute yourself and get set to talk to us, because we're going to have you on for a little bit. You're back from your trip. We're going to talk about that in the next slide. It looks like that. So hold on for a moment, but happy birthday. You had one on the 13th. That was Monday, right?
Yes, it was.
And we missed
And it
you.
was a very quiet one. I had just come back, so I decided to take a rest and did absolutely nothing. But it was enjoyable.
Lovely. And
Yeah.
Michael Cook, you do remember that there's a birthday coming up in your household? Yeah. Let's hear about that.
Well, the actual celebration is in the planning stage. So we're happy to be having some options. One might be going out to Tide's Work, which we've done before. So it's not settled yet. We're in that world of possibility right now.
That sounds lovely, and I'm sure you're going to do a bang-up job. You always do. So Joyce, next slide shows a picture of you hard at work. Tell us something about your travels.
Yeah, this was a travel like no other, going back home after an absence of 2 years. And that's my sister in the middle and my daughter on the right. And they wanted to prove that I could still take part in all the things that I used to. It's planting season and it is hot. So they gave me a spade and they gave me all the things that I needed to show that I could still do it. And I did it. I actually planted a Nandi flame, which is the famous tree in the movie Out of Africa. So that was my welcome back, and I had a really, really good time. That's actually my village. Behind those tall trees is my mom's house, where I spent most of my 5 weeks. So it was a wonderful trip back, but things are different, and generally everybody is very suspicious of people coming from the US, especially from California, because they read a lot about California. So they think all of us are having the virus. So it was good to show them that I am actually okay and completely vaccinated. So it's good to be back, but it was wonderful being back after such a long absence from home.
We missed you. Really glad you're back and glad you made the trip safely.
Thank you.
Okay, shiny pennies. We've got two. Kathy, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Joe's gonna mic you up.
Okay, so, I'm adopted and my brother had a lot of mental issues. So every time he'd come to town, I would take him to Red Shoe and buy him a new pair of boots and get him all clothed up for his next adventures. He's passed away, and so when I see these homeless guys, I don't think, oh, they should be working, because I know a lot of these guys, they can't, for whatever reasons, bipolar, schizophrenia, whatever. So one of the things I like to do is hand out gift cards for Safeway. So I was in Hawaii, I was driving down Kalakaua Boulevard. I'm usually in my car when I give things away, I feel I'm safer that way. So it's before dinner time, I'm driving down Kalakaua, I see this guy, standing there begging, and I hand him, Safeway gift card, say it's for $25. Oh gosh, I just can't tell you how good it feels. He's like telling me exactly what he's gonna go get for dinner. He's gonna go get a unagi dinner, which is like my favorite eel. And he's just just so grateful. I just can't tell you, and don't forget these things. And I don't care if it's a bottle of gin, because I'm making them happy, And another thing I do, and it ended up, just sort of happened. I was driving down Van Ness, the guys used to stand there in the middle before the construction begging. And I had a sandwich, a homemade sandwich for myself, and I handed it to the guy. And I do that now, I always bring extra sandwiches, but I just remember when he got that sandwich, he stopped begging and went and sat down and ate that sandwich. And I'm telling you, these are little things, but oh my gosh, they make you feel so good, and you never forget these people. And that's my shiny penny.
Thank you very much. And let's hear from Dan Needham. Check out this text.
Well, greetings from Michigan. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, well, I wanted to think back on different service opportunities, and I thought back on the words of that great early Rotarian Will Shakespeare, who said, sometimes one is born to service, sometimes one achieves service, and sometimes somebody has service thrust upon them. And emergency situations are that latter one. And I remember being a junior or senior in high school, and my friend Mark and I were driving back from Katati to Sebastopol on Highway 116, and probably heard some music at the end of the beginning. And that corner of Lano Road and 116 that has the new light, there was a car upside down in that field. And so we pulled over because we thought we might be able to help. And it turns out we were first on the scene. It had just happened. And a fellow and his wife were in a Mercedes, and it was upside down. We didn't know a lot of what to do, but we did know enough to turn the key off to the running car and get the wife calmed down a little bit, enough to not be pulling the fellow out of the car because he was fairly injured. We waited for the emergency crew to get there, and that was before cell phones and things. That took a little bit longer, and helped them stabilize the fellow and move him to the ambulance. And it turned out that those were a couple of good things to do, even though we didn't know. We just stopped to help if we could. But the fellow had broken his neck. And so not getting him out of the car right then was a good thing. And so didn't think much about it until my high school graduation. And would come across the stage and a young woman walks up to me and asked me if I was Dan Needham, and I said yes. And she gave me a great big hug. I'd never seen her before, and she said, "You helped save my dad." So that was a great feeling and an early Sebastopol adventure for me because I was fairly new in town at that point.
Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you, Dan. What a moment at your graduation, huh? Okay, so talking about magic moments, let's hear from Michael Phelps.
Okay, well, that's perfect. Yeah, so my partner, we and I had a fantastic week on the Big Island of Hawaii. It was a great change, and I made some special friends while I was there. You can see one of them. That, by the way, is a great little zoo, and I'm sure it's on the Big Island. It's outside of Hilo, and it's absolutely a little gem with fantastic landscaping and everything. So we just had a great time. I'd been to Hawaii before, but I'd never been to the Big Island, and this was just great. The only issue is getting the Hawaiian State Department of Health clearance so that you can actually get on the plane. And that I found to be extremely difficult. But once we were airborne, the rest of the week was beautiful. We stayed on a tropical fruit orchard on the coast, right? Walking distance to the beach. So I feel very blessed to have been able to do this. Thank you, David.
Lovely, and welcome back. So I just run right over here. This is my workout for the day. Hey, Joe.
DMR, yes, we were.
The southernmost location?
Yep. I was feeling a little tired. I just wanted to Cuba for a cigar or two, but we had gone back east for a wedding in DC, and one of Patty's nephews got married. And while we were out there, we figured we'd add a little trip to it. We visited my cousin in Orlando, and then took a road trip down to the Keys, and it was hot. How hot was it? It was so hot. It was so hot. Let me tell you, on top of the heat, the humidity, the rain was incredible. Anyway, it's good to be home. It was a good trip, but don't visit the Keys in the summer months. Let me tell you, it is hot.
The words of experience. So, Joe, when you were down there, an hour later, what happened?
Oh, yeah, we happened to post that on Facebook. An hour later, one of Patty's best friends from high school, and we graduated 50 years ago, posted the same picture with her and her husband at the same spot. So they were about an hour behind us. We had no idea that they were there. They had no idea we were there until that came up. We didn't, unfortunately, we weren't able to get together. They were staying somewhere else, but it's just, you talk about wild coincidences. That was really bizarre. So there was a line of people to take this picture, by the way. That's how it is down there. That's about two blocks from the Hemingway house, which is pretty cool. Not that it's hot, but it was pretty cool. We drove by the Truman, Florida White House. We didn't stop in there. Key West is a giant area of bars. There's bars everywhere, and there's even this place you can go for a hangover hospital, it's called, where they sit you down for a few hours and infuse you with liquid so you can go back and drink some more, I guess. But it's a pretty wild place, I guess, at certain times of the year. But it's a pretty, again, I can't tell you how awfully uncomfortable it is if you don't have air conditioning. So there you have it.
There we got it. Thank you very much, Joe. And have a look at this. Talk about magic moments. Who's going to talk about this? Michael? You're the instigator. You're the guy to talk.
So this was the first half of our district grant project that we did on Monday. And of course, we built the stage at Ives Park about 20 years ago. So this time we came in and we built a ramp out of shale. And we built new steps for it. It's in much better shape, and hopefully Peacetown will be able to move back in next year. We have a second part of the project that I think is going to be done on the last Monday of this month. And that is that we're putting a redwood perimeter around the playground on the other side of the park. We're using 8x8 timbers, and we're going to lay those into the ground and build the perimeter around. So more information on that as it becomes available.
Thank you. And thank you for those efforts. And you were up there with whom?
With Nick and with Joe and with Wayne and with 4 or 5 people from the Dune Club. And it was a really good project of everybody working together.
It was beautiful to see. I just came by, took pictures, and ate a donut.
David, you were like a Worcester. You showed up when the work was done.
Yeah, I have a talent for that. So, what makes you feel grateful? Is there something that you're thinking about that you feel grateful about?
Contrary to public or popular opinion, not all ducks fly south for the winter or the fall. So I'm particularly happy that my ducks, the Oregon ducks, flew east for the fall and want Ohio State. So $20 for the Community Foundation.
And let's have a look at Michael Cook.
Yeah, as you all know, I work with global telemedicine, and we started a new program that is on something called a mini grant. So for $500 to $1,000, a doctor who's practicing telemedicine can get some equipment or something like that. It's a new program, so we're now just kind of promoting it. For the first time, we got somebody who actually read our newsletter, clicked on the link, went to the website, applied for a grant, and is in Bangalore, which I had no clear idea where that is, somewhere in India, right? But it's the southern part of India, and he's doing telemedicine, and we get to help him. Made my day.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you're making a lot of people. I think I heard some money clinking into the conversation. Thank you very much for making those contributions, and let's move through things. Here is an opportunity to support folks. If you like bingo and you like going places, October 22nd, the Rotary Club of Rancho Cotati is hosting a bingo thing. It'll come out in an email. Then, if you like supporting Youth Exchange, you can sign up. I'll send this out to Rotary. The Rotary clubs in the far north are hosting a golf tournament along with drawings and good stuff. So that's probably worth rolling the windows down in your car and rolling on up north and going to this event. They will have, so the proceeds will support the youth exchange program.
Our club is entered.
Our club is entered?
We have a threesome.
Whoa! You're driving up there and doing it?
Well, we're gonna get up there, yeah.
Michael's gonna walk.
Wow, that's very impressive. So, Diana Curtis, tell us about the Apple Blossom Parade.
Yes, we're going to have a parade, and it's going to be we're going to meet at East Hurlbut. We start putting it together at 8 in the morning, and the parade actually launches at 10. We are going to be putting the float together at 1330 Garden Lane, 9 a.m. this Friday. If anyone wants to come and help, we really appreciate it. And it's going to be exciting. We have our theme again is superheroes, our volunteers. So if you want to join in walking in the parade, please show up. We'd appreciate having you. And I will send out an email again with all the information. I'm kind of excited about this. At first I thought, apple blossom in September, but I think it's going to be really fun. And again, I'd like to invite all of you to join us. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for organizing that. And superheroes, how cool. And we have, we're going to get special featuring, because put your hands up if you are going to be a parade announcer on the route. Woo-hoo! They'll announce us 3 times and we'll turn circles, right? Is that how it's supposed to work? So, volunteers are needed to help us out before and after the meeting. It's special because you got to be here for it. And if you are able to step up and do that, it would make that process lighter and more joyful. There's music, there's dancing, it's fun. Hey, news on the district conference came in just last night. I haven't received the email yet, but due to pandemic considerations, it is not going to be in person after all. So unfortunately, we're going to lose a bit of a deposit on that. But the district conference will be online and available to you. Add these to your calendar. You heard about the Apple Blossom Parade this Saturday. I have a special request, and that is you board members who are in the audience, and there'll be an email about this. If it's at all possible for you to do a Zoom meeting with us on Saturday after the parade, 2 p.m., we would be able to look at the current budget and see if, have a look at it and see how far we can get on it. It's being worked on as we speak. So do please check your calendar, and if you can put that on there, it's great. If you can't, please email me and let me know what you can do. But Saturday afternoon would be have to be it. Sunday is out, and board meeting is Monday. All are invited. Also on Monday, 7:30 a.m. Is that hiking group going out?
That's the plan.
That's the plan. Where are you going?
Not planned yet. Not sure yet. TBD. But you don't find out. You'll be the second to know.
Okay, we're gonna know about that then. Next week, Wednesday, the 22nd, club assembly. Zoom folk, you're a part of it too. We'll have a spot for you. And so if you are an officer in the club, please be prepared, specifically for the committees, what it is that you do, why people would want to work with you, and hopefully we'll get everybody signed up and participating in probably more than one committee. Works well for all concerned. September 29th, we're going to have an away meeting. Currently, it's scheduled to be at the Sunshine Cafe. There's some talk about going afterwards to the Sebastopol Center for the Arts. We're seeing if we can put that together. If we were able to do that, we would be able to see the exhibit that is related to the, I'm sorry, what's the arts program called? Art Trails. We'd be able to see pieces from the art trails that are centralized at the Sebastopol Center for the Arts. And somehow or other, magically after that, on the 29th, we're supposed to do an international committee meeting, and we will be able to telecast that event, as we will have our little Wi-Fi doodad hotspot contributed by Brian Bauer. And we'll be using that to, so folk, you won't be left out. And October the 27th, our district governor, Dustin Littlefield, will be visiting our club. If there's anybody who has a suggestion for where he might stay, please bring it forward now. Call me, let me know what your thoughts are. Otherwise, I'll just book him a room at the Fairfield and put him there. But he will be with us on October the 27th, and ideally, we would have some meeting with the board prior to that, like the evening prior, little dinner sort of thing. Okay? And any other announcements for the good of the order? When I was a teacher, we always waited for a minute.
I have one.
Yes? Let's hear from Dan.
So also on the 29th, please mark your calendars if you're able to help out at the food bank from 2 to 4 p.m. And we'll have some club members there and some easy work, and we help some hungry people.
That would be good. Sorry to leave that out, Dan. I don't know what I was thinking, but it wasn't that, right? Okay. Any other announcements? Next week's program. There you go. Community service. I forgot I had this slide. International service, youth services, club service, membership service, what's happening and how you might join so that you can build community inside of our community. And is our speaker with us today?
He's trying to get on, but I have an introduction for him I could do.
Let's hear it.
Our speaker is up in Seattle, and he's having a little bit of difficulty logging into Zoom, but let me go ahead and introduce him, and then we'll hope that he makes the connection. Oh, maybe that's him right now. Hello?
So you notice this little device is called a gimbal, and it steadies my shaky hands and allows people in the Zoom audience to kind of visit with folk and see them. There's Dan. He's covering his name up. He's going to remain anonymous. Sorry. In my family, you tease people if you like them. Seems like in this family we're doing that too. So, who wants to share what they did? Michael, are we ready?
I think so. I think he said he was just logging in right now. So
oh, good.
I can go ahead and.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hold on a second. You're about to
Okay, so welcome Michael Withy. Michael is a Seattle-based public interest lawyer who for the past 50 years has made a career defending the constitutional, civil, and human rights of the little guy. Michael has taken on Fernando Marcos, Boeing, Exxon, General Motors, the Seattle Police Department, and a host of other powerful opponents who harmed people who they assumed could not fight back. Mike is the former president of the Public Justice Foundation and has received numerous prestigious awards, but his most important accomplishment has been his successful trial of Fernando Marcos, the former dictator of the Philippines, for his involvement in the murder of two Filipino-American activists, Silme Domingo and Jean Viernes. Former King County Superior Court Judge Michael J. Fox said that Withy is one of the lawyers who is not afraid of getting into long, difficult battles with powerful adversaries, whoever they might be. Mike studied at Pomona College, received his Juris Doctorate degree from the University of San Francisco. He's the author of the Seattle assassinations of Silme Domingo and Jean Viernes, while in the press 2018. And this is of no small importance. He is a friend of Club alumnus Dewey Watson, who I think is watching us now. So please welcome Michael Withy.
Hi, thanks so much. I really appreciate Michael and Dewey inviting me to speak to the Rotaries. I've been able to attend some of your meetings here in Mercer Island and speaking about my book, but I really appreciate the opportunity. Can everybody hear me and see me okay?
Yes.
Well, I've been asked to talk a little bit about the teaching of critical race theory. And I think the controversy that has developed says more about the state of race relations in our educational system in this country more than anything else. One has to ask the question, why does the criticisms of studying the role of race in our society rise now, after a summer in which Black Lives Matter and the mass movement against racism and white supremacy has gained enormous traction and put millions of people into the streets? And simply put, those who fault teaching about our racial history seek to perpetuate a version of our history that has for centuries benefited white supremacy at the expense of people of color and has marginalized communities in this country. Where was the outrage when, has been prevalent for over 100 years, many Southern Christian and private schools perpetuated the racist myth that Black folks immigrated here? They still use that word. Black people immigrated to the United States, and they were content living the lives of slaves and singing their songs and picking cotton, and that racism has largely been eradicated. Those are the principal myths about race in our society that I get upset about, but apparently those that are attacking, excuse me, critical race theory care less about. So in order to understand the controversy, I think we need to break down and give some definition to a few of the key concepts. First, we postulate that race is primarily a social construct, not a biological imperative or concept. We are humans. We are part of the human race, no matter our skin color. And really, and when you look around us, diversity is the order of the universe and life on our planet. Ask any biologist. We witness this diversity every day. But the separation of people on the basis of race or skin color or nationality is anathema to our survival as a species. It sponsors fear of the others, not like us, and leads to antagonism and at times contemptible violence. But what do we mean when we say race is a social construct? It means that the concept of the white race was created by a social order that was centered economically, politically, and socially on racialized slavery for over 300 years. I say racialized slavery because in the South, all slaves were Black and all Blacks were slaves. In the Roman Empire, they had slaves, but the slaves were the people who weren't the citizens of Rome. It wasn't a racialized slavery. Then Jim Crow, after slavery, and separation of races occurred, apartheid occurred because of the doctrine of separate but equal for another 100 years after the Civil War. And now policies of desegregation and integration continues to perpetuate economic and social injustice against people of color on a mass scale. What of this term white? Michael Tiger, a professor of law at UW, in his book, Law and the Rise of Capitalism, pointed out that white as a racial category was created in colonial Virginia when the code writers were asked to write a statute outlawing miscegenation. And they got tired of filling in the names of all the nationalities that Black people couldn't marry: English, Scottish, Irish, German. And so they invented the concept of the white race. They didn't even use the word Caucasians. It's just Blacks could not marry whites. But then you ask another question. Well, how is Black defined? Any portion of African blood was Black, not white, because Black was considered a taint, a sin, an example of an inferior people, a badge of disgrace. Why was someone who was 1/16 white considered only Black, for the purpose not just of anti-miscegenation statutes, for the purpose of voting, of owning property, and law of succession, because race is a social construct, not biologically determined. Another concept, racism is not just a bad idea in white people's head. If so, it might have been easier to defeat. It is an entire social, economic, and ideological system of power and wealth. When we look at the anti-racist movement in the 60s and 70s that I grew up in Seattle, and even today, we always taught supporters there's no such thing as an ideological immunity bath, that if you just kind of take a pill, you would rid white people of the racism and white privilege. What did it take to be fully involved in the anti-racist struggle is what it took when you combat your white privilege, which I was very much a part of, white privilege. I went to a great high school, Beverly Hills High School. I went to Pomona College with Dewey. I went to University of San Francisco Law School. But what does it mean to be anti-racist? Means to be fully involved in the anti-racist struggle in the concrete, whether it's demonstrating against police brutality in the minority communities, or in the 70s, as we did, occupying construction sites where people of color were not found. Dewey and I went to school with Myrlie Evers, the widow of Medgar Evers. They were building Medgar Evers Pool in Seattle without anybody of color. And that was my first case. I represented the head of the Black Student Union at UW who was arrested on a construction site because nobody of color. We picketed at the South African consulate to oppose apartheid. In other words, it's not an ideological immunity bath, it's walk the walk. Put down your white privilege, use whatever skills, platform, and education or status you've gained to do what? To defeat white supremacy. And above all, learn from our history. Adherents of critical race theory root their discussion of race in the realities that have long been ignored by the mainstream educational system. So what is CRT? First, that slavery and Jim Crow fueled the economic expansion of the United States by exploiting labor power of millions of slaves for profit, for wealth, for power. And the growing mercantile, textile, and burgeoning capitalist class, even in the North, derived enormous benefit from slavery. Shares of slave-owning plantations were monetized, and they were bought and sold in the stock markets in England and New England and in Europe. The process of primitive capital accumulation in the colonies and later in the new country called the United States was enormously enhanced by the profits generated from the slave means of production. But what else enhanced this economic expansion that North Americans are so proud of? It was the violent expropriation of hundreds of thousands of acres of fertile farmland from Native Americans by exterminating these proud and courageous peoples. Yesterday, I heard a US congressman, a Democrat from Virginia, claim that the war in Afghanistan was the longest war in US history. Wrong. The longest war in US history by far was waged by the US cavalry against the Southwest and Plains Indians, chiefly the Apaches tribes, between 1849 and 1886. 37 years of ongoing slaughter, mayhem, and cruelty dispossessed a vibrant and courageous people from large swaths of land. And what was this land used for? To build railroads, to colonize, to grow crops and feed the expanding multitudes. Go west, young man. Shouldn't our elected representatives know this history? Why didn't they? They weren't taught critical race theory. In other words, our real history. Historians and political scientists use the word genocide to describe mass killings and subjugations of human beings of a certain nationality. Is there any question that that term applies to the colonialist regime against native tribes that were here when Columbus came? So when the fundamental defining characteristic of a country like ours is founded on racial slavery and genocide, which lasted for hundreds of years and which profoundly influenced the power structure and economic relations in society. Is there any reasonable doubt that this characteristic should be central to our history in the country where our history is taught in our schools? And why is that? Because until all of the privileges and prerogatives and vestiges of white supremacy are defeated, root and branch, then we have not accomplished the fundamental goals, either of the Revolution of 1776, of the Civil War, of the defeat of the power structure in the South in the 1960s. We have failed to create a liberated society where all people are truly created equal. So there may be differences of opinions about the strategies on how to defeat white privilege, but there should be no doubt about the need to cleanse our body politic of white supremacy. Defeating white supremacy is not of mere historical interest. When John Lewis was beaten senseless on Bloody Sunday at Pettus Bridge, he understood completely that what was at stake was the need to overthrow the white power structure in the South, and that only a revolution in values and human rights could displace Jim Crow and Plessy versus Ferguson. It took mass struggles that continues to this day. My final point is that a mass white supremacist and racist movement has been unleashed by our former president. He turned over the rocks of our society, and look what came crawling out. Charlottesville, the murder of George Floyd, and so many more. The January 6th insurrection fueled by the big lie, the Proud Boys, homegrown domestic terrorists, and the anti-vaccination credo that places one's personal preference to not wear a mask or get vaccinated far above the needs of all of us in sound public health that saves lives. And what is the response of these white supremacists to the awakening and outraged masses who marched in the streets throughout the world in 2020? Its response is to lay blame at those who teach critical race theory or any real, fair, or objective account of US history. What is their argument? CRT teaches the white race to hate itself because of all the disasters it has perpetrated. So it's teaching CRT, not police brutality, not ongoing discrimination and violence against people of color, not the economic disparities and income wealth inequalities that strikes hardest at people of color, not the true ills of society. The real danger, they claim, is teaching our true history to our students. Why? Because therein lies the seeds of destruction of the power of white supremacy. The real fear is not that whites will hate the race, because CRT doesn't teach that. The real fear is that folks will be educated and begin to see the historical origins of the Trumpian racist movement and how this country was founded and governed for so many years. Structural, systemic racism. Armed with that understanding, students will take steps to oppose white supremacy and combat racism wherever it rears its ugly head. Those who are afraid of teaching our youth our true history act in the deepest tradition of white supremacy, defend its privileges and power. In this sense, defending the teaching of our true history of racial oppression is not designed to teach us to hate ourselves, but rather to liberate ourselves, to become enlightened, connected, compassionate advocates for equity, inclusivity, and community. Learning our history can liberate our minds to imagining ways of ordering society based on a beautiful rainbow, melting pot of peoples, races, nationalities, genders, sexual preferences. That is the goal of critical race theory. Now, is that so bad? So that's my presentation. I appreciate any questions or comments you all may have.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
The big issues about racism I encountered as an academic were the questions about the heritability of racial differences in intelligence. Is that still a live issue?
It absolutely is a live issue, yes. There's been a lot of geneticists that apparently think that they can discern certain characteristics of inferiority by the presence of basically by the presence of the black gene pool. And I think those theories have been debunked, but they still are out there. And the kind of worst examples, I think, of the quote supposed genetic superiority of the white race are in the folks that teach that.
I understand what you're saying, and I taught history before I became a school administrator. But I have to say a couple of things related to this. Number one, when I think of Robert E. Lee, I think of someone who was superintendent of the United States Military Academy, who brought about after the war a healing to bring things together. And I'm not sure if tearing down his statue or tearing down Francis Scott Key because he owned 3 or 4 slaves at the time when a lot of people did, we're trying to go back and change history. What's your feeling on that?
Well, I grew up in the South. Robert E. Lee, it was like Washington and Lee High School in Arlington, Virginia. But when you think about it for a second, think of this. Robert E. Lee lost the only war he ever fought. He lost it on behalf of insurrectionists, people who were trying to essentially overthrow the government of the United States in the South, at least. They represented, not only was he a brutal slave owner, as was George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, but he managed to throw hundreds and thousands of people, of Confederate soldiers, to their death in Gettysburg. For what? For a notion that slavery is a superior system of the means of production, that blacks are inferior. And this stain and the really condemnable aspects of the Confederacy that survived is just so it's so anti-historical. It's so surprising. Do you see statues of Hitler in Germany? And why is that? Was it because the Germans learned the lesson of the rise of fascism and Nazism in Europe in the 30s? Yes, they did. When are we going to learn our lesson? Symbols like statues of Robert E. Lee are important icons for people growing up. And in order to thoroughly defeat white supremacy, we need to not exalt and put on a pedestal, literally, the examples of the people who sent hundreds of thousands of people to their death in a cause that was evil, slavery, and a cause that was continuing to infect the body politic in this country. Because, after the Civil War, you talk about Lee's supposed generosity, but after the Civil War, after a few years of Reconstruction, the North basically left and peonage became the means of production. Basically, Black people were still on the cotton fields and they were paid pennies a day and they were exploited. And, the whole notion is that the working class in this country, well, Black people and Chicano people and Latinx people, they entered that working class at a disadvantage. They came in at the bottom layers of the working class. There was a thing in this country called the white labor aristocracy. The big trades that basically employed largely white people. The construction trades in Seattle that I know something about had nobody of color in 1973. So when you look at the impact of the Confederacy and Robert E. Lee, the just cause that was supposedly the defense of slavery, we need to root that out and say, no, that wasn't a good thing. And no, Robert E. Lee wasn't a good general. And I think that's what's happening. We're rewriting the history to reflect the accuracy not the myth. So that's how I feel about Robert E. Lee. I say take all the statutes down. You know how many Confederate statutes and icons are in this country now? 1,600. And there's military bases named after generals. The state of Washington, King County in Washington was named after someone from the Confederacy. We changed the name about 20 years ago to Martin Luther King County. Those are important struggles for people to understand the history. Thank you for your question.
And thank you very much, Michael. And the questions I think are very helpful because they give voice to how this is a controversy still here in the U.S. and it's worthy of discussion. So with all of that, let's get a joke. Sorry to follow so quickly.
What did one ocean say to the other? Nothing, they just waved.
Joe.
Very short.
Trails to you until we meet again.
Happy trails to you. Keep smiling on the way.
Happy trails to you till we meet again.